rush 4. Plenty of time for John. Now squeezes, steps up in the pocket. LA can run inside the 10. Head first. He flies off the 5-yard line.
65 horsepower trap. It might pop wide open, Rats. Get this in! Is that there, Rats? Nice done, baby. Yes, sir, Rats.
High snap. It's no good. The Chargers will win.
Here comes the rush. He sidesteps. Can he throw? He can't. The ball flipped forward as loose. A wild scramble. 2 seconds on the clock. Casper grabbing the ball. It is rolled a fumble. Casper has recovered in the end zone. The Oakland Raiders have scored on the most zany.
Welcome, everyone, to the Wild Wild West podcast. I am Richie Richey of the MHRT Network. To my left is Captain Jack of the Captain Jack channel here on YouTube. You can go ahead and find him on Twitter and YouTube. You can catch all sorts of information on the Raiders. And to my, I got to figure this one out. To my bottom right is Coach Defense, representing the Chargers. They've had some really interesting news these past few days, and I hope to get some more details on that from you. Welcome, Coach Defense. Thank you very much for joining us today. Last but not least, we have the newest member of the Wild Wild West podcast. Please put your hands together and welcome Alex Givens.
I'm trying.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, you know, a Raiders fan just simply can't clap and cheer for a Chiefs fan. I guess it's just it is what it is, right? Alex, welcome to the podcast. We're thrilled to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to be here and chop up the shop with you guys.
Fantastic. So maybe we should just jump right into it. We have a pretty packed podcast for you guys today. We're going to delve into kind of the post-draft stuff here mainly today. And we'll start off with the post-draft signings and each of us kind of spilling the beans on who we think the best one for our team was and why. Maybe we'll throw it over to Alex if you want to start us off but the Chiefs. We can get some new Chiefs information. Jack, we know. We got it.
Hey, I've never had the clap.
Wow. That's how we're starting.
There's a sailor joke in there somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's the line. The shot did get rid of it a couple times.
Just to dive kind of right into some stuff the Chiefs did post-draft. I mean, obviously they had a very exciting draft, I'd say, from any Chiefs fan perspective and probably any football fan perspective. They did a lot of exciting things. But they did, they made some pretty exciting moves kind of immediately after. Obviously, they traded for Johnson in Houston, which I think could be a good addition, could not. But, I mean, they got him for like a 7th-round pick. So kind of a win-win, I'd say. But there's two really undrafted rookies. I'm really kind of excited to see how they, fit into the offense and if they carve out a role or not. One, I'm sure everyone's kind of been reading about it, is Justin Ross from Clemson. I mean, if you would have been hard pressed to find somebody who didn't say that guy was going to be the first receiver taken in this draft in the 2019 college football championship, when he just went off in the first half. And he's just had some injuries, but I mean, I think the Chiefs, are one of the best spots for him to go. I mean, you got Mahomes, so kind of hard to find a better QB and someone to maybe help kickstart a career. And it's like, if it doesn't work out, worst case, I mean, they signed him after the draft, so it's a win-win, I'd say, for both sides. But I'm really eager to see what happens with him, and maybe they put him on the practice squad and he kind of just learns the scheme. But I mean, he played at Clemson, so he's definitely got the athletic ability and route tree and hands to contribute early. And the other one that's kind of more under the radar is Jerrion Ely from Ole Miss. He was a running back at Ole Miss, and the only reason I'm intrigued by him is he was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. I mean, probably top 1 or 2 ranked running back. Coming out of high school, had offers from pretty much every Power 5 out there. Went to Ole Miss, didn't necessarily put up the stats you would expect someone, who's so highly regarded. Didn't really do what you think he would do. But being a former college football player myself, I know that that's not always indicative of someone's ability. And, sometimes you just go somewhere and it just does not work out. You don't fit in that scheme. That coach doesn't really know how to, get you the ball and use your athletic ability the way it's supposed to be used on the field. So, and I think that the running back position is probably, kind of an under the radar thing to watch for the Chiefs, just because it's been a while since they've had a bona fide number 1 guy. And so I'm just kind of interested to see, if Ely can kind of bring some of that athletic ability to the table and carve out a little role, here for the Chiefs.
Coach, you want to go?
Yeah, I'll go. Well, first of all, we know the Chiefs don't run the ball, so let's not get
Hey, they used to.
Not too high an idea the running game is going to be paramount in Kansas City. Let's stop it right there. But anyway, I had to give you a little jab. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah.
Appreciate you. Appreciate you being here, filling out our vacancy for the Chiefs. But overall, man, the Chargers definitely making waves when it comes to news when in free agency as well as post draft signings. So. I guess I teased, and Rich, do not remove me from the chat. I'm gonna preface it by saying that before I bring up, he like gave me a 2-second ban because I brought up Bryce Callahan because he was upset that he moved from Denver to LA. So Bryce Callahan was the biggest notable name that we signed for agency. Slot corner, as we alluded to last week, that he was sometimes in the last couple of years, his body kind of failed him a little bit as far as injuries are concerned. But I think if his usage rate goes down, which I think it will, because he won't be forced to play every single down based upon our depth in our secondary, I think that he'll play well when it comes down to him fitting right in to remove Rich. I see you, Johnny. But I think he'll fit right into the Brandon Staley scheme defensively. And I think he'll be a playmaker for us in his limited role. Another underrated sign that we had this past week was Kyle Van Noy, hybrid middle linebacker, inside linebacker, edge rusher from the Patriots. So we picked him up. The edge rusher depth to our lineup. One of the small, I guess you can say, check boxes that we had to get off the docket to get us some depth there because as we know that Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa have some slight injury concerns in the past couple of years based upon their usage rate as well. So adding Chris Rump in the draft and having Calvin Noy as that hybrid inside outside presence, championship level presence from the Patriots is definitely something we're going to look forward to, adding their leadership to the locker room. And I guess a notable one for undrafted rookies that we signed, I'm kind of looking at Letty Brown. He's a running back from West Virginia. I want to say I saw some limited tape on him. Of course, we don't get a lot of West Virginia tape in mainstream media, obviously, right? But he has some notable runs for West Virginia. He's definitely a grinder. He kind of fits the bill for more of an Isaiah Spiller type role versus Austin Eckler. So he could be that third or fourth back that we could use in our system to get more back to a balanced offense. Because I love our passing game this past year, but our run defense kind of disappeared in spots that I think could have won us games, obviously. So if we can get to a more of a balanced attack when it comes down to run pass, then I definitely think we'll take a next step in our evolution as far as offensive production is concerned. So I like where we stand at. I think our signings were good. Outside of speed at receiver, I think that we checked all the boxes as far as needs. And I'm hoping, against hope, we have about $7 million in cap that maybe we can convince Marquise Goodwin to come off the couch and run some routes for us in LA, and then we'll be good to go. I'll be happy as a kid in the candy store.
Can I interject real quick, Rich? And I'm sorry, I saw you about ready to breathe out, so I figured I'd get you before you said that comment. These guys are full of shit. Okay, talking about a running game. Okay, maybe the Gargler fan to a point because they have Austin Eckler and they picked up Spiller, but wait, no, I see. I can't do that either. It's hard.
There you go.
Your camera is directly mirrored, and there's the mental math that needs to take place for that.
F it. Okay, I'm pointing at a guy that's so full of crap that I can't even point at him correctly.
Wow.
Okay, that's the point. Talking about a running game.
Running game? Alex, that was nice. Cap just got to give you all the vitriol.
I mean, trust me, you signed up for this crap. And again,
I know. I'm ready for it.
And I'm going to try because I don't know the rules of the show. I think I'm only down for one S word. Okay.
Yeah.
So I apologize. I'm going to try to keep it maybe at that. And again, Johnny Bach, I'm sorry. I'm sorry because I don't swear on my shows either when I'm on Roku TV. There's a plug. Watch my shows on Roku TV as well.
Shameless.
But I just had to. But actually, to point though, no, I will give them this is the fact that the Chargers and the Chiefs and the Raiders and to a lesser extent Broncos, everybody has figured out that this is a pass happy league, but you don't win games unless you can run the ball as well and stop the run, which is why the defenses on all four of these teams across the division have gotten better all around. Okay. Yep. Better all around. So that's my one snide comment as well. And again, Johnny Bach, I apologize for throwing out the S word.
So the only thing I wanted to say is I really like to hear some comments from those, especially from other teams on the signings that you've heard from both the Chiefs and the Chargers, and also any of your thoughts on some of the signings that both the Raiders and the Broncos have had post-draft, not just the draft, but post-draft as well. Kevin, I'll throw it over to you in terms of the Raiders, and then we'll talk about kind of what each of us have kind of brought up and go from there.
Actually, the Raiders have been, I don't want to say they're asleep at the wheel because people said that we were asleep at the wheel in free agency, and then we throw out Chandler Jones, and then we have that signing of Devontae Adams. So we weren't asleep at the wheel. But I will say this, okay, and this is true. I had to check because somebody gave me crib notes, said, well, you need to talk about what's been going on after the draft. So like a good schoolboy, I did my assignment, okay, because that guy, okay, yeah, I can point that. That guy gave me the assignment, so I actually did. And the Raiders have basically done nothing since the draft, other than they signed linebacker Kenny Young, which was a very good signing, and then to sign Kenny Young, they released another linebacker in Justin March. And other than that, and waiving the rookie standout in training camp last year, Trey Regis, because they signed, they drafted two running backs and they signed a third in UDFA, which is going to be that running back room was so crowded. You know, I think they actually did Trey Regis a favor in letting him go to find, because he's a decent running back. And he's going to find a home somewhere. So that's literally, that's all the Raiders have been doing since the draft. Now, I can say conjecture is that there has been an interest in cornerback James Bradbury once he did get released by the Giants, because the Raiders are very thin at cornerback. They've signed a lot of the cornerbacks. I think that the Chiefs drafted every cornerback that was available in the draft. I'm pretty sure they did. For good reason. I think they drafted 7. I'm being a little facetious, but not much. But there's been an interest in James Bradbury, and if Bradbury can wait until June 2nd, trust me, we'd love to have him come aboard, because the Raiders get that $20 million cap influx after June 2nd. And the only other thing that we've heard that's like, say, rumor control is that Nick Kwiatkowski was seen coming into the Raiders, for a visit. And I like Nick, and I thought he was one of the better signings that we had 2 years ago, but he just got injured, and oh, by the way, he got injured. So we didn't really get 2 years out of him. I would like him as a good depth signing. And there's also some conjecture that maybe Nelson Aguilar might come back to the Raiders because he worked decently, not great, under McDaniel, but he does have a good rapport with Carr. So if we have Nelson Aguilar join the receiving corps as well, I'm sorry there, KC. I like our receivers better than any receivers in this division. That's the tight end, wide receiver, and everybody else. I'm sorry. I'm going to throw that down.
A little bias in that comment. It's okay, though.
Yeah.
A little bias.
Who's throwing on the ball, though?
Well, if Derek Carr can remain upright, and that's the question.
That's a big if.
No. Hey, he had we were playoff bound last year. I remember we beat somebody the last game of the year. I can't remember. That's right. Yeah. But and we're going to have a better revamped offensive line. Okay. But there we go. Who's Keelan Cole?
Wide receiver. Apparently, the Raiders just signed.
Just signed him. Breaking news.
Yeah. Okay.
Breaking news
by the way.
Hey, he's got some underrated highlights.
Keelan Cole just signed. There's another addition after the draft. Thank you there, Raider A.
So I really only have one for the Broncos. We haven't been particularly busy post the draft, much like the Raiders, although I think we'd be even less busy after the draft than the Raiders have. We signed a bunch of our people leading up to the draft, and then we were focused on a lot of the pre-draft stuff to try to set ourselves up in that regard. The one tight end, which, Captain, I've been pounding the table for, I even suggested that if we didn't sign him for whatever reason, he would probably have fit into the Raiders offense pretty well, and that's Eric Saubert. I have him as my top signing for the Denver Broncos post-draft. Obviously, we'd made some other moves pre-draft, but this is post-draft signings. In my opinion, he is the ideal kind of outside zone style tight end. He's a pass catching and blocking tight end, underrated in the pass catching game. And if you want to see some highlights of Eric Saubert in the passing game where, he actually got the ball thrown to him, unlike last year where the Broncos just forgot he existed in the passing game until the end of the season, you can look at the preseason rather for the Broncos where you saw him used properly when we started using more of the flanking tight ends in the preseason, and then they would break him off and then have him run up the field. Although I do think in the Hackett offensive scheme where you're going to have more breakaways from the tight ends and you're going to have more kind of a moving scheme where they're not always going to be doing the same thing all the time, you're going to see Saubert likely get some breaks kind of up the seam and that sort of stuff. And he's got sneaky speed. So I really think that he'd be a good guy. He was, in my opinion, one of the underrated signings of the Broncos, and I think you're going to see him used a lot more this year. He reminds me a little bit of the hybrid role that the Chiefs use Kelsey for. Just Kelsey is obviously got that shiftiness and likes to use his hands a lot more and doesn't get called for it. But aside from the would-be penalties of Kelsey, Saubert has a lot of those same skill sets. Yeah, in my opinion, when you see him play.
I also I like Albert. I can never say his last name, from Mizzou, but that guy's a freak.
He's a freak. Yeah, he's a legitimate freak.
Albert.
Yeah. I was excited. Well, and I was excited to see how him and Locke would kind of carry the chemistry, which obviously didn't happen. I was kind of a low key Drew Lock fan, so but I think with Fant gone, he might kind of be an under the radar kind of coming out tight end. Just kind of depends. But to the point you just said, I mean, obviously they know they're not going to maximize tight end as much with the new coach and Wilson. Otherwise, they would not have gotten rid of Fant. I mean, why would you get rid of someone like that if you kind of knew moving forward you're not going to use that position or prioritize it as much? So it's going to be exciting to see what they do with Fant gone and kind of some people that have already been in there and see what happens.
Fant had some underrated blocks last year in the blocking game and the run game.
He's a hot guy. They know how to block.
But the problem is that he also had some major misses in the blocking game as well. So I just have a funny feeling that the Broncos looked at the progress that Albert O was making in the blocking game, and he was already kind of a mismatch just in the passing game.
Yeah.
So I actually think that they looked at Albert O as almost an even kind of trade almost, in my opinion, for Noah Fant. Like I think they push.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think they basically looked at that and said, hey, if we can just keep Albert Owen and elevate him and have him work like he was working at the back end of last year and really started to be a difference maker, I think that that's part of the reason why they ended up keeping Albert O rather than holding on to Noah Fant. And as you said, Fant had some freaky speed and he had kind of some intangibles that were great, but he was just inconsistent in some of the blocking. And I think that when you're doing a run style outside zone scheme, you need that blocking ability. Yeah. I love this question, by the way. I do. I love this question. See, the problem is that you're going to ask each of us, and we're each going to say one of the other teams, right? Yeah. So it's going to be one of these.
Right.
The Spider-Man meme.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I guess the only thing I will say is that
it ain't the Chiefs. I can tell you that.
It ain't the Chargers either.
Oh crap!
That leaves two.
Right.
First come, first serve.
I have a funny feeling that the Chiefs are going to find out pretty quickly that the loss of Tyreek Hill was a greater one than they thought it was going to be when they sent him out the door.
Yeah.
So I actually think that while you'd like to joke that it's not the Chiefs, you might be surprised at the regression that you might see by the loss of a player of that caliber that forces another team to always kind of know where that guy is on the field. Mm-hmm. So I do well think that you may see teams playing you differently now that you basically have just that one top tier guy on the offensive side of the ball that has a proven track record. And, no offense, no, I don't see any of your other wide receivers even close to that same caliber.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I don't necessarily think that the bunch they brought in one of them has to be to the same caliber. I think collectively they got to account for, Tyreek had 159 targets last year, 1,400 yards and like 9 touchdowns or something. I kind of equated it to, like in Moneyball when they're like, how do we replace Giambi? And he's like, well, you don't do it with one guy, you do it with these 4. And I think that's kind of the approach they took. And I think it was to totally, revamp the offense because you could kind of see it last year. The first 2 years of Mahomes, it was like teams were afraid to play like too high and kind of man across the board. And then you saw it last year. They were just doing it more and more. And it was like they didn't seem to want to scheme outside of that. And so I think they were like, well, I think we got too complacent. So, and obviously, if you can get the draft capital they got from Hill and not have to pay him, I get why they did it. And I think they did it to kind of revamp the passing attack as a whole. Obviously, Kelsey's there. He's proven he's going to get his stats until he doesn't, and it just falls off a cliff. And I think they brought in guys to kind of collectively make up for Tyreek, but at the same time, not allow defenses to know all we got to do is make sure someone's over the top of Tyreek and no one else, and we're fine. Because honestly, last year it was Kelsey kind of banged up, people scheming Tyreek, and then we had to rely on Pringle, Robinson, and Hardman to kind of carry the load when you needed something done. And it obviously didn't work out. The AFC Championship game, they come out in overtime and try to throw 2 balls to Demarcus Robinson. It's like, why the hell are you doing that when you got here by throwing it to Tyreek or something? And so I think they did it to revamp and not allow teams to kind of scheme the way they have.
So I'm going to throw
in the AFC Championship game this year. Marcus Robinson will have at least 1 or 2 receptions.
Yeah, catching beers probably from the guy bringing them to him.
Hey, that was well played. I have to, that was well done. No hesitation either. I like it. Nice job. But I do think that I would argue that the Raiders, the Broncos, and to certain extent the Chiefs are in a unique situation coming into this year, despite all of the positive changes that we've all seen. So the Chiefs are in what I refer to as kind of a danger zone for certain teams. Mm-hmm. You guys are attempting to retain your quarterback, but change out the skill position guys to try to keep things moving in a positive direction. Sometimes that works out, and more often than not, I know you don't want to hear this, it doesn't, right? No, yeah. It never turns out to, ever be the same again, right? And the Raiders and the Broncos are in a different situation where we're going through scheme changes and head coaching changes, which will have different challenges ahead. But while they're different, we're also the same, because Andy Reid's going to have to change his offensive scheme in order to fit the fact that he doesn't have a guy that's nicknamed the Cheetah for a reason.
Yeah.
Right. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how all three of our teams manage this. I think that Mahomes had started to show that he was mortal near the back end of last year, where people started beating you guys. And then I also think that now that you have more normal wide receivers on your team, that you're going to be more in kind of slugfest than you might be used to. So I think that'll be an interesting position for Mahomes, having never really had that challenge before in his career. And he's actually struggled with it most times where he's been in those scenarios, especially without guys like Tyreek or Kelsey in there. And then I think the Broncos and the Raiders are in similar spots just overall. I think our rosters are built to be more grinding style teams. And then I think that the Broncos have an opportunity if things click. I'd also argue somewhat the Raiders are in a similar position there, where we can start taking off and doing some things because we have a combination of a running and passing game.
Go ahead, D. I want to hear, because I want to hear from Coach D. I don't want to jump in all the time.
Okay. Well, I think you look at it from a collective perspective that everybody has a deficiency. And I would say, we alluded to the idea that the Chiefs the offense is going to look completely different. You have the same OC, you have the same head coach, same quarterback. Your weapons on the outside are different for the most part. Kelsey's still there. And we also can also admit that, Hardman and Pringle and those guys, kind of disappeared at spots, and they were kind of heavily relying on Kelsey and Tyreek, which made it easier to defend you once you figured out the blueprint. And I think they kind of came to fruition with Todd Bowles in the Super Bowl. They played you guys twice in that year. In the Super Bowl, they completely changed their approach, and they were successful, especially having an elite pass rush to get after Mahomes. So I would say for sure that you have to look at that perspective. For the Chargers, I would definitely say that although I think we're pretty balanced on both sides of the ball now between the draft and free agency acquisitions, we always have that one caveat that we always get in our own way. We have to keep from getting in our own way. I'm just being honest here. As long as we don't get in our own way and stay healthy, because I think injuries coupled with the idea of us shooting ourselves in the foot, or i.e. cheddar bobbing ourselves, shout out to we don't do those things, then we'll be fine. I finally have a modern quarterback, with an unlimited arm,
Sunshine.
Very good decision making, very mobile, not limited in any perspective, because when we had Drew Brees, there was a limited arm strength there. With Philip Rivers, there was limited mobility. Now you don't have those things holding you back. And the offensive line has gotten much better, and that's probably the best O-line I've seen in quite some time, way back to the Damian Tomlin heyday years. So I think that overall, you have to honestly, truly, hedge your bet as far as your matchups are concerned. But when the Chargers, I think that as long as we don't get on our own way, we can stay healthy. I think we can compete with anybody. Especially if we have a more balanced attack, like I alluded to earlier. But for the Broncos and the Raiders, just like you guys said, you have a new regime, you have a new scheme. And I was actually having a discussion with one of my coworkers earlier about this particular aspect, that when we switched schemes and switched themes, because you both had I was switched for sure. The Broncos had a defensive-minded coach last year. So you're switching a defensive-minded coach for an offensive-minded coach. Now, the defense was good last year, but the offense was kind of anemic, in spots. So you switching gears and you have an offensive-minded coach, where the defense take a step back. You have better personnel up front, but the secondary, from a corner perspective, is kind of light. So you have to look at it that way. Same thing with the Raiders. Offensive-minded coach, yet again, what is the defense going to look like? Can you get any stops? Can you get people off the field? Can you stop the run? So you have to understand that who you match up against week to week is going to matter based upon who you play is going to dictate whether or not you have early success. And the schedule is going to play right into that, so we can see what those first 4 games are going to be. Who exactly, who we play and how we match up against them, whether or not it's going to be a guaranteed win or we're going to struggle. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think that the Raiders might have some challenges with losing Philo. I think that's or Philo. Yeah. Well, I call it. It looks like a French name to me, so I'm going to pronounce it as such. So I mean, I'm from Canada, so we actually look at French words and pronounce them like they're French words.
Yeah. Let me get into my accoutrement.
Yeah, it's like the gabagoo.
So just for the record, guys, it's foyer, not foyer. Okay, let's just we'll just set that straight right now. So so with Philon, he was a great interior guy for you guys, and it was a big loss, and you saw it when he went down that game with that center of the field. And I know you don't want to hear that, but at the end of the day, when you looked at that loss, it was like he was in and he was out, and there was a massive gap that when he was gone. And so I think that it'll be difficult to replace a player who showed that much heart and that much drive for your team, especially when you pair it with a guy like Crosby, who is, I don't care who you are, I don't care what team you're on, that guy's an elite player.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, no matter what.
New Orleans begs to differ.
Sorry,
Narlands is the proper way of saying it. Yeah, I should say it properly. But so that's really kind of my big thing on the run stopping and stuff, because I truly agree with what you're saying. You need to be able to stop the run. You need to be able to do those types of things. I do have a question.
I have to interject. All you people that always talk about friggin' what the old school boxes. Let me talk to you about a nose tackle. I got a nose tackle for you right here. But I also drafted one in the draft. Okay, the kid out of LSU,
Neil Farrell Jr. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I listen.
And by the way, like I said, that kid's a monster. Gonna play the nose
in the run game. He is definitely a monster. Yes.
Right. And putting him next to the other kid that we drafted, which is
Matthew Butler.
Dude, I'll just throw him your way. You keep going with those names, baby. You keep going with them names.
They signed Bilal Nichols too, right?
Thank you. Hey, you guys could do the show for me. I'll just sit back. Hey, what else did we pick up?
Yeah. What else do you want to know about your team?
We got you, Cap.
See, and like I said, the defense has gotten immeasurably better. And like I said, the only thing on our defense that I think is suspect is the cornerback position.
Yeah.
Safety too, outside of Moore. Trevor Moore.
Well, Merrick I like, but I think that this is going to be the year that Gillespie breaks out.
Okay.
Because I saw him at Mizzou, and the kid was wonderful at Mizzou. He just got the injury bug last year and couldn't do anything, okay? Anybody that can keep Kyle, what's-his-nose, the tight end that the Gators had, to like one catch maybe during the Mizzou Gator game can cover somebody. And if he can keep Kyle, the other kid, there was 2 Kyles, okay? And I'm a Gator, and I even forgot his name.
2 youths.
Yeah, 2 youths. 2 youths. 2 what? 2 what? 2 youths. Youths. Anyway, Gillespie, I think, is going to be good. Abram might not. Abram's going to be a package deal. He's going to come in when they know they're not going to throw, because you can throw on Abram all day long, okay? He's a package
murder everybody.
Exactly.
Tries to be Rodney Harrison.
Yeah, try to take your head out.
The cornerback, and that's why I said Bradbury is a key. You pick up Bradbury, and I've been waiting for this all day to say on the Kansas City guy. How many catches did Kelsey have in the Giant game last year?
Not enough to remember.
0.
Yeah.
0. And you know why? Because Bradbury was on him and kept them to a goose egg.
No, yeah. I did. Bradbury, he's the thing I like about Bradbury is he like turns it on. You get inside the 20, and he does not give up any sort of movement when you get into the red zone, which is, I mean, what you want. He's not like, the most athletic of all defensive backs out there, but dude is physical. And there's a lot of rumblings about the Chiefs getting him too, but I mean, they've been saying that for
like I said, whoever gets him, he's a better scheme fit for us.
It's going to be an arms race, and honestly, I think it's going to be an AFC West team because every franchise in this division just is loading up, and I mean for good reason because
trying to one up the other.
And so I truly think he's going to go to let's go, Robert, go Chiefs finally.
Hey, he's my friend. He's not your friend.
He's my friend now.
Okay.
But no, I think
Robert, really good guy.
I think the Raiders, the only thing is the Raiders is the problem is they just cannot seem to draft very good. I think it was big that they didn't pick up the 5th option on all of their first round picks.
We talked about that last week.
It's just, and then I think they have a good core, but it just seemed like Gruden just got so caught up in some prospect and then would just take them. I mean, taking Leatherwood, taking Farrell. I mean, you missed out on guys, and I think I mean, while they're good, I think that was the biggest hindrance outside of some position groups is just the fact that they can't seem to land their draft picks.
I'm not, and you are correct, sir. You are correct. So go ahead and get yourself a barbecue at that gas station that everybody talks about being
Joe's,
good.
You got to go.
City. Okay, yeah. Get yourself one of those. And by the way, the draft is in Kansas City next year, so you're treating all of us. I can
do that.
Treating all of us at Joe's Gas Garage. And you are correct. Like I said, Gruden and even the regime before that with Reggie McKenzie and whoever drafted before that, okay, they sucked for the most part. In the first and second round, they suck. But let me ask, is Gruden and Mayock there anymore? Is Reggie McKenzie there anymore? No. But you know who is there? Somebody that actually knows how to build an organization because they were at the sleeves of some guy named the Hoodie all these years. And I think that the Raider organization is now relevant. Again, we'll see, but I like what we did this year in the draft. Other than the 3rd round pick who was from Memphis, and again he graded out as probably one of the best run blockers in the center guard position there. They got quality kids from programs that actually have names: LSU, Tennessee, UCLA. Okay. Where else? I'm thinking UCLA. The Ohio State University. Okay, and Georgia. That's some good quality programs. And I also say in undrafted free agency, they picked a linebacker up from Iowa. Unheard of, picking actually a great product and plugging him in the UDFA. And then with getting a kid with what you can't teach size, by the way, 6'8", 350 for Bam Olasene, and he was sitting there. So again, you are correct, sir. Gruden sucked at drafting.
Yeah,
he did.
Well,
and he
Antonio Brown really panned out too.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Antonio Brown really panned out too, didn't he?
Let me ask a question. How many games did Antonio Brown play for the Raiders?
He didn't make it out of Hard Knocks, so
well, that's what I'm saying. He is not a Raider. He is not a Raider. He is not a
I'm
Raider.
just saying.
You struck a nerve, Alex. You struck a nerve.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I'm sorry.
So moving on. Remember, we do try to make this a family friendly show.
I'm sorry. I had to.
So
Anybody that drops the AB, I got to go after him.
So, who do we think is one player that each of our teams lost this offseason that we wish we hadn't? Now, Coach, I think you pretty much know my answer on that one.
Yes.
You got spared today. Last pod, not so much. But in my opinion, I think the one big loss rather for us is Callahan. I think he's an excellent slot corner. I think when he's, in my opinion, I thought he would have been a great guy to help bring up even a younger guy, but like, someone like a Nasang Bassi or even someone like that as a mentor to kind of help him read the field and kind of put himself in a good spot and that kind of those types of things. But Callahan is my guy that I have for that particular free agency loss. I think he was a major player for us. He had obviously those injury concerns and injury issues, but I think that if you can use him in a 50-50 type role of playing key downs, important downs, getting himself warmed up and on the field, and then bring him off to help kind of not get himself hurt, I think that is probably going to be helpful for him. And I do think that the Broncos have younger depth that could intermix that would have helped him kind of spare his body, for lack of better words. But he is the one guy that I really liked and I really wish we kept. And Captain, you did bring up another free agency loss. I was not happy to see him go, but I also wasn't as torn about Kenny Young as I was Bryce Callahan. Kenny Young came into the Broncos post Von Miller trade to the Rams. He really did turn around the inside linebacker room, particularly in the early stages, and it did seem that he and Baron Browning had a great kind of 1-2 punch when they were both in together. I will say, though, that I felt that Kenny started to slip off after the first few games and started to get exposed a little bit in coverage. I thought he played run defense well and played some discipline pretty well, but then when he was asked to drop back and cover guys and crossing routes, that type of stuff, that he did in fact struggle and was thrown at rather than thrown away from. And that's normally a sign of a linebacker that an opposing team sees as an advantageous target, as opposed to someone that you want to just avoid at all costs. So Callahan was the don't throw near, you're done. Whereas Kenny Young in those situations was kind of used as the weak link in some of those passing situations. So that would be kind of my only feedback on Kenny Young. But I thought he really injected a vibrancy to the inside linebacker group that we hadn't had, because Alexander Johnson, while he was good in the run game, was a slower inside linebacker. Kenny Young had a little bit more speed and kind of added a little bit more pizzazz to our linebacker core. So those are my kind of two guys. Obviously, Callahan's the big one for me, though. What about you, Captain?
I definitely didn't want to jump in with because again, I'm the old guy with the get off my lawn type of stuff, and I don't want to take over here with a very stalwart crew here. And again, apologies for the F-bomb, but again, anybody that drops AB is gonna get it from me. Okay.
We know your trigger words now, Kevin.
I get it.
Okay. I agree with you on Kenny Young. I said, let me see, a Raiders linebacker that can't cover. I think we've had that since the 70s or the 80s. So hopefully actually maybe Kenny Young will be in on run downs, and maybe Kyle Fackrell will be in on passing downs and as a speed rusher. We'll see. The Raider, like I said, maybe Van Valkenburg, that kid out of Iowa, might be a better fit there as well. But I like Kenny Young as a good addition. And that exactly leads me into the one that got away. And a lot of the players that got away went to find themselves again in Gus Bradley's defense up in Indianapolis. So they're Bradley transients, okay? And I'm not even going to include the fact that we traded Ngakoue, which actually was good for him because he wouldn't have really been a good fit in the Graham defense, and we ended up getting a corner that we needed in Rock Ya-Sin. but Ngakoue got away, but that's a trade. The guy that got away that I really wish we would have kept was Nick Morrow, the very speedy linebacker that was really showing himself prior to getting injured last year and has had some injuries in the past. I also like Nick Morrow because he threw me a glove down in Miami and I still have his glove. So it's kind of the sentimental thing as well. But really, Nick Morrow, which is that linebacker that was speedy, that can cover from side to side, him signing with the Bears was the one guy that got away that I really wish we would have kept.
What about you there, Alex?
Yeah. Well, like you said before the show started, you could answer it for me with Tyreek. But I guess out of the players that left free agency, weren't traded, the big thing that the Chiefs lost was secondary. I think if you look at the target or the amount of the defensive snap shares in the secondary from last year, they only returned Snead and basically one person that has over like 20% of the snap share from last year. So they lost a lot in the secondary. But with that, also not a bad thing because you got rid of Dan Sorensen. So I don't have to watch him give up bombs in very crucial points of games. He can do that for Nolans now. Or
penalties.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was good at those. He was really good at those.
Yeah, I was at the Bills Chiefs game in October, the Sunday night one, and it was just like we got momentum, and then right before half, you see Dawson Knox just over the top, and there's 49 just right behind him. I was like, we got to stop with this guy. But I saw someone put it in the chat, and I totally agreed with it. I think the biggest free agency loss is obviously Matthew, just because of he's older. And not necessarily the athletic specimen he was when he got into the league or even a little later on. But just what he brought to the table in terms of his overall, like his instincts, you could tell, that's not a coachable trait. That's just something someone has. But you could tell with Matthew was out there was a total difference in how the defense flowed. You could tell he was making different calls that other guys that were out there wouldn't necessarily be making. You could tell that he watched film and was prepared and knew how to get people around him in the right spots. Also, he was kind of a liability to some degree in the passing game as he got older, but he played pretty well in the run, and I just think that is going to be a pretty big loss. But I think they brought in guys to kind of fill those shoes. It's just going to be. It's going to be difficult to replace that. Same with replacing Hill, but I think they try to do the same approach and bring in a group of guys that can hopefully kind of account for what Matthew brought to the defense.
Fair enough.
Excellent. And Coach, what about you? What do you think the Chargers lost that you wish they hadn't?
Well, my biggest, I guess you can say, my sentimental pick for our team was Uchenna Nwosu, USC guy, Carolina guy, born and raised. Him being a dominant finesse edge rusher for us in the past 3 years of his matriculation in his career was definitely big for us. Him paired up with Bosa was a really good 1-2 punch when they were both healthy. But I think that with the idea of adding Khalil Mack when he was I guess your perennial all-pro type of talent, you kind of once we signed or we traded for Khalil Mack, I knew Chenna's days were numbered. I mean, you can't keep both because Chenna was up for a contract, 25 years old. He was up for a big deal. And you paying Khalil Mack the money you're paying him based on his contract. So you have to ultimately kind of hedge your bet. Khalil Mack, Uchenna Nwosu. You kind of deal with the now versus the potential of later. I think that Uchenna is very instinctive, makes plays, wreaks havoc with people when he's very unassuming. They'll really think he's the air quote person that a dominant from the dominant ilk, but he just be in position to make plays when you don't expect. So he was definitely a good added bonus to our defense. So that's probably my number one, and my 1B would be Kaiser White, the linebacker that we lost to the Eagles actually. Because I think Chenna went to Seattle and Kaiser White went to he went to the Eagles in free agency. He's in hybrid actually. He was a former safety in college. They converted to linebacker. And he's very versed in coverage skills as well as being a thumper in the run game. So having that dual threat and 3 down type linebacker was a loss, definitely. But I would say 1A for me would be Chenna, and 1B would be Kaiser White.
So it looks like one of the Raiders guys has a question for you, Coach. I'll wait for that to go into the chat. This is the whole purpose of the show, guys. You have access to all 4 AFC West teams. So we really want this to be a collaborative group effort of having all of you guys jump in, ask questions, and get some information that you otherwise probably wouldn't be able to find as readily, just because we are all fans and following our own teams far closer each than we are the other opponents that we go against twice a season. So this is a great opportunity to kind of ask those questions that you kind of wanted to know the answers to, or, whatever it may be. And also, if you like the podcast, please go ahead and comment on the respective channels that you're watching them on. Go ahead and like those videos as well. Help that algorithm out so that other fans of our collective teams can get in on this podcast. That is one great way that you can help us out, not just individually, but collectively as a podcast. That would be great. And for those of you that prefer to just listen to us talk and just love our voices, we are available wherever podcasts can be found on most podcast platforms. Let's go ahead and see if that question made it through the chat. I don't see it there yet.
Yeah, it was from Jack Kenna. Jack, put your question up, shipmate. They are allowing you. And Coach, while we're waiting for that question, I told you last week that his name is 50 Who. 50 Who. Okay?
Well,
I'm not going to tell you again. And then you throw out matriculate. You throw out matriculate again, and I told you that's a Chiefs thing.
Just for you, mark it down. I'm wearing my Khalil Mack jersey next week on the side. I'm letting you know. I'm already got it ready. It's already clean and ready to go. Khalil Mack jersey preloaded for the show tomorrow next week.
All right.
50 deuce to you. He's 50 deuce in the card. 50 deuce. Yes, indeed.
Deuce. Well, there's some other comments that could be made if you're going down that route, but that's fine. It's I think Mac is an interesting one. I think he had a bit of a stretch, and I think that he's had splashes, but he hasn't, from what I've seen recently, been able to sustain that type of success that we saw when he was with the Raiders. So it'd be really interesting to see if he can start kind of stitching games together. Like he has a splash game, and he kind of just kind of falls off now. And whereas before, when he was with the Raiders, he had big 3, 4, 5, 6 game stretches where he was just a wrecking ball. So right. I'd like to kind of see that. If you can bring that back up.
I would. And I think, again, it's about usage as well. The Bears defense was on the field way too much in the last 3 years because they just couldn't manufacture any offense. So it's just a method of burnout. If you cut down his usage rate, from a pass rusher perspective, I think he'll be much fresher at the end of the season. And I think that goes to anybody, that's not 22 years old.
And arguably too, I think with having Bosa there, it's going to kind of revive his pass rush and his stats, because you look at Chicago. Robert Quinn had like 20 sacks last year. Why do you think he had 20 sacks? Because teams were accounting for Mac, not him.
Exactly.
And so if you get two, and I think kind of across the board, every team did that in this division. Got two guys to pair together. Maybe not the Chiefs. I guess we got Jones and Clark, but we'll see what the rookie from Purdue brings to the table. But the Raiders getting Crosby or having Crosby and getting Chandler Jones and Mack and Bosa and then Chubb, and I don't really know who else, but you got Chubb. But I mean, there's all dominant pass rushers in almost every team in this division, and I thought it was interesting to see that that's what the first move almost every AFC West opponent did was go get a second premium pass rusher to say, suck it, Chiefs, like deal with this, and then just kind of pile on from there. But
did he just say "suck it, Chiefs"? I like this guy.
Well, you can see the writing on the wall with what teams are wanting to say, making moves like that. So I think my Mac is older and lost a step. I think with Bosa being there and teams not being able to say, well, if we double Mac, then maybe Quinn will be good, maybe not, but let's take our chances there. It doesn't allow teams to do that. So it'll be interesting.
That was your question there, Coach. It was
there. We go. There we go. Kylo Fackrell. Okay, I got you. Yeah, Kylo Fackrell by way of Green Bay. He was an edge rusher out of Green Bay that we picked up in free agency last year. He's supposed to come in to be that Kyle Van Noy role that we have going on this year. So I think that he's a solid 34 outside edge rusher. Pretty good defensive run stopper as well. I wouldn't give him a high grade, but I think he's pretty decent in the run game on the edge. But I think that he's pretty much locked into being a edge type of defender for you guys. Third down specialist, maybe second to third down. I wouldn't drop him in coverage too much. I think he's not that well versed in that particular arena, but I think that he can fill in for Chandler Jones or Max Crosby if they need a blow or if they are banged up a game. But he's a serviceable guy. I'll give him credit for being that. He did have some minor production with the Chargers last year.
Okay.
Super interesting. Now we're running up on time, but I think
because of me. I know it's because of me. I apologize.
But I think it's super important that we do bring it up just because it's been such dominant. It's been pretty dominant within the NFL news. I'd like to just kind of go around the group here and also in the chats. I'd like to see what your comments are. I'd like to see what you have to say on this topic. So it's time to bring up the NFL and Goodell and the Mark Davis reports that have come out with regards to the workplace.
Yeah, bring the shame bill.
I have some interesting comments that may actually surprise some, but I'd like to know what each of your thoughts are, and I'd like to hear from everyone here that has joined us today. Thank you very much for everyone who is with us this evening and who join us after the fact. I'd like to hear your comments as well. We will start with Coach, and I think we'll finish off with you, Jack, if that's okay. Just given the fact that it hits close to home.
Let me go last.
Yeah. Coach.
Okay. I had to do some reading up on it. It's a laundry list of allegations going on here at this point with the Raiders organization in the past year. Starting with Gruden and then leading up to now the I guess you can say firing. Am I saying that right, Cap? The firing of the president?
Yeah.
He was actually fired. He didn't quit, but he fired.
The interim president.
You're right. Okay. Yeah, you're right, because they did underscore that when they talked about him being let go, that he was the actual interim president. But he had been with the organization for like 18 years. Am I correct?
You're taking my talking points.
I'm sorry. I just want to get my facts straight. I just want to get my facts straight. My new name is just the facts. That's my middle name is just the facts. So, what in that regard, I want to say that it has to be some merit to this situation because he is an ingratiated member of the organization. He's been through multiple regimes. And I guess my biggest takeaway from this whole situation and the whole idea kind of makes me cringe when I hear Raiders fans say it was a hit job on Gruden and it's now a hit job on Mark Davis because the league is after him as a owner per se. Let's not get away from the fact that what actually happened. Like let's worry about the actual allegations versus what the ramifications are. Because you have what Gruden was, on paper is saying. That's written text. It's in conjecture. It is absolutely positively he said these things in email. So let's not completely and totally discredit the idea of what Gruden said about DeMaurice Smith and women in the organization and the amount of vitriol he had going back and forth with his brother and the Commanders organization. So that particular aspect of it, people are completely, utterly sweeping under the rug, and that should be the forefront of the conversation. The character, the lack of character these people are showing should be the thing that you should be talking about versus what the smear campaign is on the Raiders organization. I get it. It's an emotional thing. It's one of those things where you have to honestly and truly, kind of keep your emotions at the door in a sense. But I would say that, overall, you have to honestly and truly, focus on the fact that they are serious issues at hand here. It's not about the fact that you honestly and truly, are out to get me. It's what's really going on in the organization. There is, hostile work environments going on. There's allegations against, discrimination against women and minorities and things of that nature. You have to, address it. Don't sweep it under the rug to address it and understand that we're talking about this for that particular point. Don't bypass that and say that that's not an issue when that's the reason why we're here, reason why we're talking about it. So that's my biggest issue. And people are talking about, it's a hit job and all this is that and this and that, and it's about them trying to condemn the Raiders. No, it's about the issue at hand, and you have to address it. And let's be honest, the genesis of this whole situation is the fact that they investigated the Commanders, and this was the backlash of it because they had communication back and forth that implicated Gruden. Is the reason why he was ostracized in the beginning. So had the Commanders not being dirty, then what implicated the Raiders organization, then we wouldn't have this conversation. However, we're here now.
Well, I can't believe I'm the one that's going to be coming in to defend the Raiders as a Broncos fan. And yes, I actually said that out loud, but Gruden was not with the Raiders at the time.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay? You're exactly what I was going to say.
No, hold on. I understand that the text was what it was. I understand that what was said, was in fact what was said. However, I also think it's important to note that Gruden was not with the Raiders at the time when those emails were volleyed back and forth. He was, in fact, was it ESPN, if I'm not mistaken?
He was a commentator,
yeah. So he was with ESPN at the time. So look, we can say what we want, and we can highlight all the elements that we want, and we can say, yes, that was Gruden. He said those things. They were emailed back and forth. Certainly some images were also emailed back and forth, which are, we'll just say, you knew better, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll leave it at that. Yeah, however,
better,
you should have known better. But nonetheless, he was not with the Raiders organization at the time. So while there's certainly plenty of things to go around that we can all discuss, I think it's key and important to note that at the time those emails were volleyed back and forth, Gruden was not employed by the Raiders organization. He just happened to be employed by the Raiders organization at the time that the emails were leaked.
Well, let me have a quick rebuttal in every situation then. Yes, he was not employed by the Raiders, but he was subsequently employed after the fact. So when these things come to light, does it matter exactly, what your situation was when it happened versus what you are now? Like, hypothetically, let's say a political official, political officials have been removed from office because of things they've done in the past. It had nothing to have to do with what they were doing at the time, but the simple fact that they did these things and they have a long history of these character problems. People automatically say we can't do business with you because of your history. So if they can do that in other spaces, then that's what's going to happen with Gruden. Because he was employed by the NFL as a head coach of a team at that particular time. Whenever it comes out, whether it be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years in the past, it came out, and people have gotten canceled for less. Let's be honest, they've got canceled for less. So whether he was a Raider at the time or not, when it comes out, whoever he's associated with at the time going to feel the wrath of his transgressions. So that's where it lands for me.
Alex, so maybe go to you, and then like I said, we're going to end with Jack. So we'll kind of do the right to left and then up here, and yeah.
So unfortunately, I didn't look into this all that much because I kind of see the headlines and I'm like, it's the Raiders with another issue. Like, what do I need to read into this? But I did try to kind of look into it, which most of what I read just kind of was like a quick blurb of, he said he was fired for workplace or for bringing hostile work environment remarks to the owner's attention, and was fired in retaliation. I, with my profession, to me, that's not an effects. I'm not gonna have an opinion until the full story comes out because, that just anybody. I could go out right now. I could get fired from my job and start tweeting. I was fired for retaliation, and who knows if I actually was, but I'm just pissed off in the moment because I lost my job. Not saying there's no, substance or value to what he's saying, but I just don't at this point, and maybe I didn't look into it enough, and maybe there's more facts out there, but to me, what I read, there's just wasn't enough to it to really, have me kind of one way or the other with it. And I had a conversation with my buddy not too long ago that I said, I'd be willing to bet that there's some sort of workplace hostility inside almost every NFL franchise's front office because it's such a high pressured career. Even if, they're making, a GM's making a couple million, but he's not guaranteed to be there in a week if the owner doesn't like what he's doing. I think that part of it, not condoning whatever may have happened or what didn't happen, but I think that, some hostility is just kind of a nature of being in the front office because you are constantly under this pressure to bring in fans and be competitive and save money, be under the cap, but make sure we don't lose more games than we did the year before. And so, I don't think there's enough about it to really know if this is a legitimate story yet at this point or not. And that's just kind of my 2 cents on it.
So we'll just say Coach and I are on not different sides, but we're certainly coming at it from different perspectives. I hear stuff like this and my gut reaction is prove it. Like just prove it. So if we're talking about the Gruden emails, obviously there's written proof and you look at it and you say, well, that's pretty hard to dispute. However, my other comment on the Gruden emails and just the emails in general is out of 650,000 emails plus, the only emails that have come out of an organization that was proven to have exploited cheerleaders and a whole host of other things happen to be the only ones are John Gruden related. Yeah. I mean, like they're like the sniff test, like literally I'm in Canada, north of the 49th parallel. It smells like crap from here, right? Like, I'm sorry. There is no way that an organization that has had that level of corruption going all the way up to the top that has been, I mean, there's lawsuits that have some credible evidence that is being presented and groups of folks that are saying, release the stuff, and then there's refusal to do so. Like, I'm sorry, but there's no way that the worst of the worst were the Gruden emails that came out. I'm sorry, just no way. I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. And I'm sorry, just the answer is no.
I get it. Now, Cap, can you help me out with this? Is the analogy you have gangrene, you cut the hand off to save the body, and that analogy? It's the old military analogy. If you have gangrene, you chop the hand off to save the body. You don't just discard the whole body. So I think that's what the league is doing. They use the Raiders as the issue of being, I'm gonna chop that hand off so you can't expose the rest of the corruption going on inside. I'm just gonna use that as a mechanism to get the pressure off what's really going on in the entirety of the league. So yeah, they could have been one of those things where since we have this smoking gun, we're going to use it and use it as a method to basically overshadow the fact that this has been going on in multiple teams and multiple organizations for years. That very well could be a point.
Right. So, I mean, this one's for Johnny. I'm going to go out and about and go take out the garbage, and then I'm going to come in and get a pop and then have a chocolate bar. Those are all Canadian things, just for those of you who don't know.
Okay. All right.
And I was trying to do the best I could to highlight my Canadian accent. So thank you, buddy. But
just have to apologize after you say everything.
I know. See, I'm not one of the polite Canadians. I'm sorry. You landed on the wrong dude. But on that element there, and back on that piece, John Gruden was also one of the very few head coaches in the NFL who was extremely vocal against Roger Goodell and the NFL and the way that they're being run. And I think that's also part of the reason why Gruden has the Commanders now.
No, they were the Redskins at the time.
They were, but keeping track of their name is becoming literally a full-time job. So the Commanders is now, obviously at the time they were in fact the Redskins. However, looking back at what occurred, Gruden was very vocal against how the NFL was being run, didn't like some of the rule changes that he saw as softening the game. I happen to be a rugby player, so playing football in Canada is actually extremely difficult to do because they have all these requirements and most high schools and whatnot won't do it. but rugby is our thing because we have like the whole UK influence. So I was a rugby player, and hitting people at full speed without pads is a lot of fun. So I was game for that for sure. But so when we looked at all those sorts of things here, and you see kind of what Gruden was doing, it's almost like questioning the league, questioning the powers that be. And when you're within a league as powerful as the NFL, that's not going to fly particularly well. And it's no surprise to me that they saw a great opportunity to try to sweep something under the rug by basically getting rid of Gruden. And frankly, that's the way it looked to me. Now, looking at the current situation with Mark Davis and some of these other pieces here, I know, Alex, you're going to know a little bit about this, but the gentleman that was fired, Dan, from the Raiders, was general counsel for the Raiders organization. So he would have been privy to a fair amount of the legal information within the organization as a result of his position. I have a few questions as it pertains to what's gone on here. If you've been with the organization for 18 years, and this is the first time that you're going to come out and verbalize and vocalize this type of stuff, that just rubs me the wrong way. That's kind of like the ex who's scorned by the fact that you said you don't want to be together anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden it's like, he's an awful person. Oh my God. It's like, oh really? And so it's just kind of the,
A little sus.
we'll call it conveniently true. Right. It's like, at the time it wasn't a real issue, but now that you're no longer with the person, now it's this like, mountain, not a molehill. Right. And so I question a little bit of that. Now, there is some flip side to this as well. Being general counsel for the Raiders organization, he would have in fact been privy to lawsuits that would have flown through the organization, like in terms of flowed through the Raiders organization, and seen HR suits that would have been settled out of court. And so as much as I'd like to say, hey, I think this is all crap, and I think this is someone who got fired, didn't like it, is now trying to, smear the organization publicly because he's in fear that he may not get another job. So he has to find a valid reason as to why he was shown the door. The flip side of that is also just as plausibly true. And that is, he did in fact, or could have potentially seen a plethora of suits that came through the organization that were in fact HR related and did have some of these allegations in it. And if it was within the same select few people who are being basically had the finger pointed at them, and if the organization didn't do anything about it, it is equally as plausible that the opposite is also true. Simply because the position within the organization would have certainly afforded them the opportunity and the likelihood of probably being the signatory on most of those documents, just simply because he was the general counsel for the Raiders. So it's really, really interesting that the person who was terminated here and the types of allegations that were being made. However, after 18 years, if this was such a moral issue for you,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sorry, you should have quit on premise alone years ago, and you would have looked much better than you do now.
And kind of to your point, if he was seeing like settlement documents or out of court things, dealing with that, why would he? You don't think the owner would already know about that? So like, why would he need to bring that to the owner's attention?
Correct.
To subsequently
Right.
get fired. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's like I said, I just don't. For me, there's not enough out there for me to buy one narrative over the other.
Right.
Just see how it plays out.
Right. And that's why I kind of threaded the needle a little bit there. But at the same time, I wanted to highlight the, I guess, the hypocrisy of immediately leaning towards one versus the other, because there's no way that someone in his position would not have seen those documents for years.
Yeah.
And if this was such an issue, then he could have, quit effectively on moral grounds and publicly made that statement before now. And then on the flip side of that, it's like doth to protest too much. It's like you got fired and now all of a sudden now you're complaining. So there's certainly enough evidence to support potentially both narratives. And it's really, really interesting. And I think it's unfortunate, as much as they are a division rival in the Raiders and everything. I think that these are some really unique circumstances that are being put on the Raiders organization, which ultimately I do question a little bit as to, with everything that's going on and all of the allegations that we've seen so far in the NFL, and I'm including things like the Dolphins, I'm including things like all of these other suits, why is it that all of the detailed information is only coming out about the Raiders and everything else is crickets?
Mm-hmm.
Look, they are the Chiefs-Broncos rival. I am certainly not cheering for them to beat us or do well on the football field. But at the same time, from a practical and just logical perspective, if it smells wrong and looks off and has all of those indicators that are kind of screaming at you, you do have to start questioning. Jack, over to you.
Thank you. First off, you definitely summarized a lot of the good things. I am gonna and again, so if you wanted to get the summary, it's what he just said. Did I point that right? No, what he just said. Okay, in good summary. One of these days I will learn how to point. I will point about this. You actually made it very easy for an argument that the NFL is doing a hack job against the Raiders, because you even said Gruden of the Raiders and I was so happy that Rich jumped on it, because again, Gruden was with ESPN at the time, and the emails were from his buddy that was his GM out in Oakland, who is now the GM in Washington, sending nude pics. Hey, check out the knockers on this chick. And oh, by the way, and all these other things. And yeah, there was more to it than that. That's the G version, folks. I'm sorry. Okay. But Bruce Allen was a snake and is a snake. And that's why he's not employed today. Okay. Bruce Allen went to his daddy's organization because his father used to be their coach. So he had some good inroads in with Washington, and that's where he made his way out. But Bruce Allen is a snake. And, allegedly, I don't want to be Bruce Allen's lawyers come after me saying, that I said it. Okay, Bruce Allen allegedly is a snake. Okay, I don't want any lawsuits here. Okay, but I have heard things. From people by the name of the Amy Trask or anybody like that could tell such things. There is some stuff going on, but the NFL, out of 650,000 emails, and I'm an analyst, by the way, I actually do this for a living, you're only going to give me 3 that have anything wrong with them. And of those 3, they concern John Gruden when he wasn't even with the Raiders, but you're going to out them. And this was an investigation about the Washington effing football team. 650,000 emails, but we're not going to talk about Jerry Richardson, who had his team taken away in Carolina for crap. Okay, we're not going to talk about the owner of the Patriots that likes to get a rub and tug down in Florida. Okay, we're not going to talk about Jerry Jones, who has guys doing coke and whores and all the other stuff in Dallas. No, that doesn't occur. Okay. But the only thing we're going to out,
You forgot about the happy endings.
He said it.
He said that.
I didn't hear the joke in there, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, and by the way, it's Wild Orchid and it's in Stewart. Not that I know about it. Okay, now I don't. I didn't know where the place is, right? But what I'm saying is, of all the other owners, and not one of them. And it's Dan Snyder, by the way, who's a multimillionaire, and Robert Kraft, who's a multimillionaire, and Jerry Jones, who was like maybe even a billionaire, except for maybe the Seahawks guy. And not a one thing was said about any of the other emails. And you can't tell me that of 650,000 effing emails that they're going to pick out 3, and it's about John Gruden. Why? Because Gruden called out Goodell, called him a schmuck, amongst other things, talked about the pussification of the game, talked about, how, he said sexist thing about lady referees, and he talked about the gentleman that played for the Rams that was gay, okay? All of that stuff is true, okay? And it was not of a good light. I'm not saying that John Gruden is the greatest thing since sliced bread and what he said was wrong, but this is one of those things when you're with your buddy, and he was talking Bruce Allen, how many times are you going to say stuff with your buddy that you might not want to let other people know what your views are? Okay. He did call DeMaurice Smith, said that he had lips like Michelin's. That's a quote. Okay. That was a knock on DeMaurice Smith. I don't necessarily think it was a slander of African Americans, but it was taken like that. Okay, and that is the truth there, Coach. Again, that's exactly what the quote was. He had lips like Michelin tires. Because I'm going back to exactly what was stated. And the African American community went off on that, and rightly so, because that's a what do you call it? A thing that is cast upon as something that is slanderous and
it's disparaging.
Thank you, partner. I appreciate that. But all these things, they went after Gruden, and Gruden was with the Raiders, and Gruden didn't like Goodell. So add that up. 650,000 emails and nothing else is said. That's bull freaking shite. I'll make it English for you to make it a little bit better. Okay. Now, to the Mark Davis thing, because I had to do the one to do the other. Dan Ventrell was with the organization for 18 years. I got the information what Dan Ventrell stated in the in that press release from a source that used to work for the Raiders that is a very good friend of mine. I won't give out his name. And the reason why he sent it to me was, and he didn't say it, but it was implied. Look at this. Look at this. This is some serious things going on. And I'm sure it wasn't because he's a fan of Mark Davis. Okay. I will say about the Raider organization, they are very positive when it comes to having the Blitnikoff organization, which I go to their charity event every year, which is anti, beating up women and anti, they're very pro keeping ladies in good course, very good organization. Look it up. It's Blitnikoff, Blitnikoff.org and things like that. Great organization to go to. So they have that going for them. But I'm also telling you this, folks. Mark likes to spend a lot of time at Hooters, and I'm sure he's not going there because of their wings. Okay? He spends a lot of time at Hooters. Line up the dots there, okay? He's kind of like Uncle Jed, the inbred owner, okay? Not high quality caliber, and the NFL is looking to get him gone. They are looking to get him gone. And whether this information that Dan Ventrell stated is the impetus for this, I'm sure that it falls upon the laps of Goodell and all of his lawyers to use it accordingly. I'm not saying that Mark Davis didn't have some issues, but I'm telling you, if you're involved in the organization, you can sweep a lot of things. You can sweep a lot of things. So again, we will see what is going out. We will see what the evidence is. Okay. And yes, he should, whoever is his barber needs to be shot. I get that. Okay, that goes without saying. Okay. That's an easy joke. But I'm not willing to say that it's a hit job by Ventrell. I'm not saying it's a hit job by the NFL, but I will say that the NFL does not want Mark Davis to own the Raiders and is looking, be it by this impetus or other means, to get him to sell the team. That is a firm belief. And I rest it there.
I think that's absolutely fair. And I think that, also technically speaking, I don't know if everyone else knows this, but technically speaking, Mark Davis doesn't actually own the Raiders.
No, his mom does.
His mom does. And so I also think that his mom is getting up there in age. And so I think the NFL is genuinely concerned of the inevitable demise of his mother, which would then mean that based on the will, which the NFL is aware of, there is a direct transfer of ownership from mom to Mark Davis. and I do in fact believe that that there may actually be a push from the NFL to get Mark Davis out before he is in fact the real owner, as in like the primary owner of the Raiders, which would make a lot of sense, right? When you're really thinking, if the NFL doesn't want the Davis family involved in the NFL any longer and they want to force them out, this is really the great time to do it, because Mark Davis is in fact the head or the figurehead of the Raiders organization. He certainly doesn't necessarily shed the greatest light on the NFL as an organization, given, spending times at various establishments that are, seen by some as questionable in terms of character, depending on your personal stances and views. And so I think that the NFL is certainly just seeing this as a great opportunity to pile on recent events and stack one on top of the other to say, the door is that way, we would welcome you to leave. And I think that's a fair generalization. And to everyone else's comments, I actually do agree. I think if you were to open up the back end servers or open up text messages or put the bug in the back rooms of the owners' offices and hear conversations, I'm pretty sure you would be shocked with some of the conversations that you're picking up and some of the words that you're hearing and the general viewpoints that you're hearing, because, in any organization, in any business, there's some very blunt conversations that take place. And then there's also some viewpoints that you may in fact personally disagree with. Now, that being said, I do also think that evidence and details and actions matter. And overall, I think that generally speaking, we've seen some positive moves forward in the NFL, and we've seen most owners, if not all, but most owners at least, get on board with some of those positive initiatives in the NFL. And I also think the Raiders organization, as much as, I hate to actually heap praise on any rival organization, have had some history, particularly with Amy Trask as a front office executive, as being one of, maybe not the first, but certainly one of the pioneers in the NFL of having female representation in very senior positions within the organization. And that was by Mark's father. Now, that wasn't Mark himself, so I do want to kind of shift credit where credit's due, but that was Mark's father. And for those of you who don't know, MHRT on our 5280 podcast actually had Amy Trask on via an audio interview. So for those Raiders fans, I do suggest you check that out. She was a great interview, really, really great interview, and had some wonderful stories about Pat Bowlen that she was willing to share with us, especially near the back end of that interview, the late great owner of the Denver Broncos. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to pretty much do us for tonight's podcast. I just really would like to thank everyone for joining us tonight. And thank you all for embracing the newest member of the Wild West podcast in Alex Givens. Let's give them all a hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Look at that.
In the description of all of the videos, you will find all of our YouTube channels. You can check us out. We do ask that you share and subscribe this video. We'd like to expand the tent and get as many comments and as many of you to give us some input and questions as possible. And guys, until next Wednesday, thank you for joining us.